I want to say that the FAA is conducting, the way that the FAA is conducting this regulatory process is actually a violation of the Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964. And what I mean by that is this process has not been made available in the Spanish language. In fact, the FAA should have issued a 30-day notice in Spanish, notified the public that there would be Spanish interpretation, closed captioning 30 days in advance. And instead, the FAA, at the last minute, 3 days before the hearing, announced that Spanish would be available. So that is discrimination against the Rio Grande Valley community. I'm multi-generational from the Rio Grande Valley. I live in Brownsville, Texas. I'm also an environmentalist. I'm a community member. And I've seen firsthand how SpaceX operations are actually very destructive to our community, how it's driving gentrification, how it's starting to displace locals. People have already been displaced from the Boca Chica village. And I'm here to speak really in opposition. I oppose the permit and any authorization for SpaceX to expand their facility here at Boca Chica Beach. And going back, this is a Title VI violation of Title VI Act, and that's why a bunch of local community groups from the Rio Grande Valley have filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, with the FAA and the U.S. Department of Transportation. Those groups include La Unión del Pueblo Entero, Trucha RGV, Las Imaginistas, Voces Unidas, the Lone Star Chapter Sierra Club. These are all local organizations that have community members from the Rio Grande Valley who are being directly impacted by SpaceX operations. Also, the FAA should have an entire environmental impact statement. Just having an EA is not enough, considering the size and scope of the proposed SpaceX project. New gas plants, drilling for gas on the beach, desalinization plants. This is a massive footprint that this operations would have on our community. And just overall, I want to say that we as humans should be investing in our planet and dealing with the destructive consequences of climate change. And that, SpaceX is just something that is directly destructive and another example of colonization of our community that we just don't need. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Joyce Hamilton. I'm representing myself as a resident of South Texas and a frequent visitor over the past 20 years to the natural areas surrounding the location where SpaceX is now operating and where it proposes to build and launch the SpaceX Super Heavy launch vehicle. My preview of the draft PEA raised some concerns for me about potential impacts of the tests, the launches, the ongoing construction, and the other aspects of this proposed expanded project on what is a fragile and unique coastline. In fact, we've already seen the damaging impact of a recent launch failure with a wide and destructive debris field along the beach and surrounding wetlands. In fact, biologists, I know one of them, who monitors the nesting plovers, which is a species of concern, have noted a dramatic decrease in nesting since the inception of the construction and the other operations at the SpaceX site. So in the past year, the Highway 4 Boca Chica Beach access has transformed dramatically with the existing buildup of the SpaceX launch site. It was always in the past a beautiful, pristine natural area of wetlands, mudflats, lomas, and dunes with an ecosystem supporting myriad species of wildlife, including wintering, nesting, and migrating waterfowl, which have been a joy to birders and other naturalists and the general public who share a concern for the preservation of this unique coastal ecosystem. So, needless to say, my most passionate concern is for the protection and conservation of the wildlife and the unique habitat here that supports them. But I also would like to speak up for the rights of the local community, the fishermen, the sea turtle rescue volunteers, the naturalists and birders, and the families from the surrounding area who lost their right to regular access to the beach on a regular basis. And so I feel all of these are big concerns. And I'd like to just end by urging the FAA to conduct a serious, comprehensive environmental impact study, EIS, on the SpaceX Super Heavy rocket proposal. Thank you.
My name is Jim Chapman. I am the president of the Friends of the Wildlife Corridor, which is a support group for Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge and Lower Rio Grande Valley National Wildlife Refuge. And my comments are on behalf of the Friends. Number one, the FAA must do an environmental impact statement instead of an EA. In FAA's own regulations implementing NEPA, there are 3 criteria to determine if an EIS is not needed. SpaceX massive expansion at Boca Chica clearly fails all 3 criteria. Number 2, FAA violated NEPA by allowing the applicant, SpaceX, to determine whether an EA or EIS was needed. NEPA is very clear that this is the permitting agency's decision. Number 3, the draft EA does not contain a launch failure analysis. What is the worst case scenario if Starship Super Heavy explodes on or above the launch pad? The FAA is also required to do a safety risk analysis, a hazard risk analysis, and those are absent in the EA as well. There are also 10 other documents that are missing from the draft EA that are referred to, but are missing from the EA. Sorry about the dogs here. NEPA is very clear that project construction cannot begin, quote, irretrievable and irreversible commitment of resources, end quote, until the environmental review is done. SpaceX has been violating this by building ahead anyway, the most egregious example being the 450-foot integration tower. SpaceX wants to build a desalination plant with injection wells, multiple gas wells, a liquefied natural gas LNG plant, a 250 megawatt power plant, and all of these are not described in any detail, and there is no evaluation of their environmental impacts. They are all in themselves significant actions that require their own environmental reviews. NEPA requires a serious evaluation of alternatives rather than just the all or nothing alternatives. One of the other alternatives that should be included is moving the testing of Super Heavy to a designated large rocket testing site, Provo, Utah, or Stennis Air Force Base in Mississippi. The latter is where the Saturn V rocket was tested and where the Space Launch System SLS rocket is currently being tested. Another alternative should include launching Super Heavy only from offshore or from Cape Canaveral. And we reject any plan for subsequent FAA tier reviews to allow further SpaceX expansion. This is a loophole which avoids additional environmental review and public comment. We saw this repeatedly from FAA written reevaluations from 2017 through 2020. By piecemealing its massive expansion and transformation, SpaceX was able to avoid serious environmental scrutiny. FAA appeared happy to oblige.
I am a geologist. I have followed the environmental assessment released by SpaceX, and there is absolutely no mention of the impact or associated ongoing doings with a 250 megawatt power plant on site, as well as liquid natural gas production on site. Both of these factors are within the environmental assessment determined to be significant, but within Cameron County, the geology simply does not support extracting natural gas locally, which means that tremendous amounts of natural gas will have to come in from oil fields approximately 80 miles to the west, or they'll be drilling an extremely large number of wells on site, probably upwards of 500. Most importantly, none of this information is covered at all within the environmental assessment, so I stand in opposition to the paperwork as it is and believe that an environmental impact statement needs to be made. There's no working around the fact that these emission standards are completely unrecognized in this paperwork. It is almost virtually unprecedented. There have been no filings with the Environmental Protection Agency or any other associated agencies accordingly. And effectively, SpaceX is trying to put a 250 megawatt power plant, which for some perspective is enough to power almost 100,000 homes, and a cryogenic methane and natural gas processing plant. Are the people of Brownsville and Port Isabel and associated communities around Boca Chica aware of the large number of trucks that are going to be coming in and out? Was that information covered in the environmental assessment? None of these things are true. And to that end, I think that it is absolutely critical that SpaceX both make it clear that this is what's going to be happening in Boca Chica, but most importantly, that the Federal Aviation Administration and others do their due diligence in ensuring that this information is spread to the community. It's absolutely, in my time in geology, I've never seen anything like this. In my association with friends in environmental assessment, no one else has ever seen such an egregious misstep in the actual filing of proper paperwork. So that concludes my point, more or less. I want to see proper paperwork done and a proper environmental impact statement done, and recognizing this 250 megawatt power plant, as well as this cryogenic production facility and this natural gas facility. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Sharon Wilcox, and I am the Senior Texas Representative for Defenders of Wildlife, and I speak tonight as a representative of that organization. The SpaceX site in Cameron County, Texas, sits within one of the country's most unique and diverse matrix of habitats that support extraordinarily rare, threatened, and endangered species. 10 species listed as endangered under the Endangered Species Act use the Boca Chica region surrounding the SpaceX project site, including the ocelot, jaguarundi, oplomado falcon, piping plover, red knot, and 5 species of sea turtle. This area is also a critical stopover site for migrating birds from multiple flyways that span the Western Hemisphere. We are deeply concerned about the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts that are occurring from SpaceX's ongoing and expanding activities, including detrimental impacts on sensitive habitat and native vegetation, including unplanned fires, debris fall, and debris removal, documented impacts on migratory and nesting birds, and impacts on resident endangered species. We are also very concerned about the closure of this area to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Refuge Management, whose work monitoring their own refuges has been routinely impeded by formal and informal SpaceX closures. We are alarmed by evident use of the wildlife refuge as a debris field within the blast danger area, and it being used for debris retrieval, which has destroyed refuge habitat in the past and will do so in the future. For these reasons, we believe a new environmental impact statement, or EIS, is essential, as the impacts of the ongoing activities at the site are and will be significant, and the EA is inadequate because it fails to take significant issues into consideration. The cumulative impacts and geographic context are absolutely essential to evaluating the current and future activities at the site that are well outside the scope of the original EIS from 2014. The stakes are simply too high not to invest in a thorough EIS. Our unique federal refuge lands, as well as adjacent state parks, beaches, and public spaces, deserve this due diligence, as they play significant roles in the ecological, social, and economic integrity of the region. Thank you.
My name is Jeronimo Reyes-Retana. I'm an artist and a researcher. I've been working on the Texas-Tamaulipas border for more than 5 years now. So after reading and studying the IAS published in 2014 and the PEA published in 2021, it is clear that the transboundary environmental and social impact resulting from the extremely intense acoustic energy produced by the engines of SpaceX launchers during liftoffs, landing, and static fire tests is treated in a reductionist manner that connotes the unilateral essence characterizing the US-Mexico border dynamics. The 2021 Programmatic Environmental Assessment deliberately chooses not to take into consideration the existence of several Tamaulipas settlements located within the FAA delimited region of impact. Moreover, the document exposes the lack of transboundary concern by not mentioning the name of any Mexican authority looking after the case, besides never stating SpaceX intentions to build a horizontal dialogue with the neighboring Mexican communities, which are primarily rudimentary settlements, impoverished and affected by a highly problematic socio-political situation connected to a state of ultra-violence resulting from an ongoing war on drugs that has seriously affected the social threat, and that now the same communities will have to live up to the shocking sound waves of Starship Super Heavy. That being said, I think it's important that SpaceX launch facility at Boca Chica, Texas, takes the transboundary effects of an infrastructure project of this kind seriously. It is important that it takes a deep look into the social political context and acts according to it in order to be coherent with an agenda that supposedly looks forward to connecting us as a species and not to empowering the social asymmetries of a capitalist and globalist order by worsening the cultural tensions of a geopolitical region that already lives under a dire situation. Thank you very much.
My name is Mary Angela Branch. I own a residence in Port Isabel, Cameron County, Texas. As a board member representing SaveRGV, a nonprofit community organization, I am here to voice our opposition to the draft PEA on SpaceX Boca Chica. In reading the draft, the direct, indirect, and cumulative impacts from the project's plan to test launch the Super Heavy, a rocket which is approximately 1,100% more powerful than the existing Starship, have not been fully or adequately analyzed or addressed to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. There are, at minimum, 11 plans, 1 letter of agreement, 2 analyses, 1 communication process, 1 data package, and the identification of emergency response team that are referenced and alluded to in the draft, but neither are provided in the draft either by description, exhibit, appendix, or footnote. We ask that these documents be provided in order to review and comment on their compliance and efficacy. Refusing to provide them goes against the public's best interest and safety. Further, a new FAA launch failure analysis is missing and must be conducted and reviewed by all cooperating and affected agencies, municipalities, and counties, as well as the general public. We also ask that an emergency response plan be provided in cooperation with the FAA, the Coast Guard, local EMS, first responders, and hospitals, complete with training operation manuals, identification of teams to be trained and maintained, as well as evacuation routes, shelters, and long-term care of evacuees and injured in the event of a worst-case scenario. We also want to know who will bear the cost to fund these emergency operations and teams. We also ask that the data for section 2.1.2 of the draft PEA titled Launch Vehicle be provided per the FAA's own licensing code, Title 14, Chapter 3, Subchapter 3, sections 450.43 and 450.45. Additionally, the scope and expansion of this project described in the draft calls for construction and operation of a 250 megawatt power plant, a pipeline to carry natural gas to a natural gas pre-treatment facility, a methane liquefier, also known as a liquid natural gas plant, oil and gas drilling and production industry, a solar farm, and a desalination plant.
30 seconds.
None of these are addressed sufficiently in the draft PEA, nor were they addressed, analyzed, or even mentioned as elements of future design and implementation in the original 2014 environmental impact statement, which renders this draft invalid. In conclusion, we deem this draft PEA insufficient, inadequate, and lacking scrutiny, and ask that it be rejected on its face and request that a full environmental impact statement be conducted instead.
I've sent several letters and all of them are against SpaceX. I live here 12 miles from the site, and I'm going to go through a few things that have endangered my life and my husband's life. Number one, we are denied access to our home during launches, space activity, whatever they decide to call it. We are 12 miles away, which is further than Port Isabel or South Padre. SpaceX decides they're going to move equipment down the road. So what do? They cut my power. I have no internet. I have no phone. My husband is 79 and diabetic. I am also have many hip implants and am disabled. So if an emergency occurs, I have no way of contacting emergency services because we have no internet. We have no cell phone. There's nothing out here. The deputies and constables harass us while trying to get home, but meanwhile give a pass to all the cement trucks and contractors. That's inexcusable. The 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 traffic on Boca Chica Highway or Highway 4 has become a slaughter zone and is very dangerous for people driving. I've actually had a Tesla tailgate me through the S-curves on the refuge portion of the highway and then pass on that same S-curve with a cement truck coming. Law enforcement doesn't do enough. They come out, it stops for about 4 or 5 hours, but then it's right back to SpaceX highway. The number of animals that are slaughtered on the road every day by this excessive traffic is inexcusable. Caracaras, buzzards, and other birds of prey fall victim because they're feeding on the carrion. Since we've been here since 2002, I used to regularly see ocelots and jaguarundi, but since
30 seconds.
Since 2018, we haven't seen anything. Nobody said anything about the LNG plant they're going to put right on the refuge and state lands, nor is there any addressment of the ICBMs that they're going to be launching and impacting Mexico, my neighbor. The people that come out leave feces and garbage on the refuge because they want a front row seat to this monstrosity.
That's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Timothy Jarvis, PhD scientist. And I'll be speaking for my wife also, Mary Jarvis, PhD scientist. First on our agenda is the fact that we have provided comments. Let me shut yours off. We have provided comments twice before on the SpaceX site. Once on 21st of January, 2021, again on the 18th of April, 2021. We have received no acknowledgement of those comments, nor have we received resolution to those comments. Therefore, this, as you can understand, public comment and addressing of those comments in a professional manner is a cornerstone of NEPA. Therefore, it defines a new low watermark in the competence of dealing with NEPA by FAA. Given that, I think any work on this programmatic EA shouldn't be immediately halted, as should any work at this SpaceX site, until these comments are acknowledged and addressed to the satisfaction of the authors. Moving on, number 2, in the programmatic EA, they have used in section 3.15.4.3 the words sparsely populated area to justify higher risk from their operation. I must take total exception to this because the Constitution of the United States, nor our legal system, either one, define our rights by population density. If one person out there should have the same protection as if you were placing this thing in downtown Boston. This underscores the FAA's lack of understanding of the Constitution of the United States or our legal system. This alone
30 seconds.
doing the whole operation. Moving on, number 3. They often refer to the FONSI of the SpaceX 2014 EIS. We have tried for 7 years to find a copy of this, either in paper form or electronic. And I must say there have been more sightings of Bigfoot than there have been sightings of this EIS. It is not available in any way.
That's 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Ken Dew. I'm a longtime resident of South Padre Island, and it's been with great alarm that I've watched the evolution of the SpaceX launch facilities and rocket operations based at Boca Chica, Texas. These operations are conducted less than 1 mile from a beach where endangered sea turtles nest. It's also adjacent to part of the Las Palomas Wildlife Management Unit, next to the Laguna Madre Bay, next to the Rio Grande Valley National Wildlife Refuge, Boca Chica State Park, Brazos Island State Park, and only a short distance from the Laguna Atascosa National Wildlife Refuge, and the Padre Island National Seashore, which is the longest stretch of undeveloped barrier island on Earth. The SpaceX facility is literally in the middle of land and waters protected by the state of Texas and the United States federal government for their biodiversity and habitats. Some of the flora and fauna are unique to the area, and some are critically endangered. The number of species potentially impacted by these operations, not just including launches, is innumerable. It would be nearly impossible to imagine an environmentally more sensitive area to conduct such operations. I have personally witnessed 3 SpaceX launches from South Padre Island, several miles away, and can report that the noise was so loud it can be felt in my chest. It is unknown how wildlife such as endangered nesting turtles and birds and other marine and terrestrial life could be impacted by 20 or more launches per year and ongoing construction and support operations. To those who mention things like, we can build another road to the beach, they're obviously not familiar with the geography of the area. It would be impossible to build another road to access Boca Chica Beach due to the Rio Grande River and the Mexican border. Another point I'd like to make is that in Texas, our access to the beaches is protected under the Constitution. Under the state of Texas protects our access to the beaches, and that's meant to be unfettered. You can't close. You're not allowed to close, roads and restrict people's access to beaches, 20 or 30 or 50 times a year. So I urge the FAA and the Environmental Protection Agency to halt further launch operations or development of Boca Chica. They're looking at environmental devastation potentially on a vast scale there as they continue to build out more and more operations. We're talking about building the largest heavy lift rocket ever been developed by man. And anybody who lives in the
30
area
seconds
will understand the environmental impact is massive. There are many other places where these operations can be conducted that are not environmentally sensitive. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My name's Stuart Diamond. Actually speaking in a private capacity at this point. I am a resident of South Padre Island. I believe that a full environmental impact statement should be necessitated. The original EIS did not contemplate what Elon Musk and SpaceX are doing or planning to do. Major concern of mine is beach closures. If they're allowed 500 hours of beach closures, that's equal to 20 days a year. Now, SpaceX doesn't consider an 8-hour beach closure a full day. So it's multiplied by numerous days. So the 20 days is far exceeded. 800 hours is equal to over a month. And as I said, if it's 8 hours a day, that's 100 days, according to SpaceX. I'm concerned about the environmental and endangered species damage, the desalinization plant, the natural gas plant, the LNG plant. These all have major consequences on the environment. Now, as a property owner, my house is my largest investment and basically my retirement. I contacted my insurance agent. I have windstorm, I have flood, everything that we need for a hurricane. I asked her if we were covered by any damage from SpaceX. She informed me that unless debris hit my house, I was not covered. If my windows get blown out, if the hotel's windows get blown out, if there's structural damage, the FAA says it's not their responsibility, it's the responsibility of SpaceX. But it doesn't say that SpaceX will pay or be responsible for making everybody whole. This could also cause a total economic shutdown of South Padre Island, which is a tourist resort. If the windows at the major hotels get blown out with the supply problems that we're having in the United States right now and worldwide, there are months backlog on getting windows. The footprint of SpaceX has increased incredibly over the past 6 months, and I wonder if it's all been permitted. This will be bigger than the Saturn V rocket. I believe that SpaceX needs to play by the rules.
30 seconds.
One of the last explosions, I live approximately 8 miles from the launch site. The last explosion, debris fell at my house. It was insulation, but it fell at my house and it fell another 2.5 miles up the island. I believe that the massive scale and potential environmental and structural damage necessitates a full EIS. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Mary Elizabeth Hollman. I'm a longtime resident of Brownsville. I go out to Boca Chica Beach with my family, as I do to South Padre Island also. The SpaceX rockets are too big and the impacts could be too negative not to carefully analyze and mitigate the risk. The potential for launch failure and the environmental and negative social impacts are very real. Because of this, I'm asking the FAA to conduct a full environmental impact statement that includes a launch failure analysis instead of the programmatic environmental assessment that is now being considered. Thank you very much for taking my comment.
Hi, my name is Eric. I've been paying particularly close attention to this project for the past few weeks. Been writing about it quite a bit, and I have a background in environmental engineering and risk assessment, process safety. I've been at it for over a decade. I've worked for oil and gas companies. I've worked for pipelines. And I just wanted to make the comment that I have never in my career seen such a sloppy document that is full of absolutely misleading, inaccurate, intentionally obfuscated information in it. I am actually aghast that this document was even passed by the FAA. The fact that a private contractor hired by the FAA allowed 11 employees from that company, that is ICF, that icon you see in the background, that is a publicly traded company. Their management has now for weeks looked the other way, while 11 of their employees signed off on a fraudulent document. Everyone who has looked at or reported this has been gaslighted by SpaceX and FAA into believing that this was some sort of given. This project was not about the rockets. That was the stated reason for it. But if you look at the document itself, this is a large oil and gas operation. It is a utility power plant, including a 250 megawatt power plant, which is definitionally a major source of pollution under the PST regulations of the Clean Air Act Amendment of 1977. It is one of the first source types that EPA pointed out as a item of concern. And of note, you will note that TCEQ nor EPA were contacted during this PEA development. There are unbelievable amounts of errors, missteps, miscalculations, equipment is named things that are not industry standard, which is a violation of the plain language requirements of NEPA. This is a gas plant. This is a gas processing plant. This is an LNG unit, and there's going to be a pipeline that will be needed that is not mentioned. All of this stuff was let off intentionally. ICF, the company, these people who reviewed it, they all know this. FAA management knows this, and they want it to happen anyway. So everyone listening to this, you've watched a oil and gas development from drilling, fracking, production, pipeline, refining, and now combustion in a utility-sized power plant that has been
That's
green.
3 minutes.
It is unreal, and this ICF needs to resign from the project.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Josette Hinjosa Cruz, and I am a member of the Carrizo-Comecuru Tribe of Texas and the South Texas Environmental Justice Network. FYI, this project was built on our land. And just as there has been massive opposition to projects like the liquid fracked gas facilities, such as Anova LNG, Rio Grande LNG, and Texas LNG, and its need for pipelines, there has still been, and there is, both opposition from the tribe and the South Texas Environmental Justice Network, as well as other organizations that were mentioned before. They have also opposed the Valley Crossing pipeline, which would pose the same risk as that flaming hole that we all saw happen in the Gulf. By the way, these are not acts of God. They are the failures of man-made technology. Deal with it. SpaceX is the same story as to when big agriculture colonized the region and left behind pesticides on the land. SpaceX has already plowed over and destroyed natural lands. And as you guys presented today, you will continue to fill in wetlands, which will continue to destroy our natural habitats here. I have traveled the world, and guess what? There is no place like home, y'all. So, yeah. Anyways, it is a fact that we are the last place along the Texas coast that has not been completely industrialized, or as I like to say, colonized. I don't have to echo any more of what others who have spoken before me in opposition have stated. Only a megalomaniac with deeply rooted colonization ideology would have so many people believe that, you know, in a fear-based faith, one that would have people quoting the Bible saying that we need to leave this planet when we are stewards of this, we are stewards to creation, okay? This is disgusting. This is a disgusting display of power. He is a megalomaniac. I don't give a shit what anybody else here has to say and has to defend him. I'm sorry. This has to end. This is 500 years of colonization. This is 500 years of our people being bullied and pushed into genocide. And this is further, and in the global South, many people, indigenous leaders are dying at our expense because everybody else across the globe wants to be comfortable and wants to provide this fracked gas and wants to take advantage of it or use it and take out and draw the dead from the ground. You can't, water is life. Air is life. It is alive. What you are taking out and pumping out of the ground is dead. It is fossil fuels. It is contributing further to our climate destruction. And that is what this project is doing. And this is why I oppose it. And this is why we need a full and complete and comprehensive environmental impact study statement. And that's what needs to be done. And I oppose this. And thank you for your time.
I'm a retired coastal scientist and ecologist with 40 years experience, mostly in Texas and Louisiana. I'm a certified wetland scientist and a certified senior ecologist. I'm commenting as a knowledgeable and concerned scientist and citizen of the U.S. and of the state of Texas, and as a fifth-generation native Texan. I have no conflict of interest whatsoever in commenting on this, unlike many others. The assertion that Cape Canaveral was more environmentally sensitive than Boca Chica is ridiculous. There's a long list of threatened and endangered species that occur at Boca Chica, including ocelot, jaguarundi, piping plover, apple-amato falcon, and several sea turtle species. Not to that at Cape Canaveral, SpaceX could not get away with its unlawful abuses of power affecting local users and the local community as they have at Boca Chica. It is not Cape Canaveral. It's one of the most unique and productive coastal habitats in the United States. It was extremely isolated until SpaceX showed up. How SpaceX got authorized permitting to set up its initial operations in that particular location is beyond me. It's absolutely outrageous that SpaceX was ever allowed to locate there, and it certainly should not be allowed to expand. SpaceX was not honest with us about what it was doing there. It has much grander plans than it has ever disclosed. Purpose and need of the EA. I'd like to recommend that FAA make sure that it checks that it is in fact U.S. policy and FAA policy to colonize Mars and the Moon. That's embedded in the purpose and need statement of this EA. And it's pretty ridiculous to me. Sounds like SpaceX maybe is trying to promote the creation of the idea that this is U.S. policy. The proposed action will have significant environmental impacts. So this draft PEA does not meet the requirements. If the FAA does not produce an EIS, the agency should be sued for administrative relief. FAA persists in its assertions that impacts
30 seconds.
Are not significant because they will be mitigated, then the FAA must identify, describe, and formally commit to the specific mitigation proposed to avoid having significant impact. This is a matter of NEPA case law. Ignore it at your own peril. Stop there. I've got lots more. This is a terrible project. Horrible.
Thank you so much. My name is Emma Guevara. I'm a lifelong resident of Brownsville, Texas. I'm also a multi-generational resident of Brownsville, Texas. I first off want to start by addressing how absolutely disgusted I am by the audacity of all of these pro-SpaceX supporters spouting the exact same rhetoric spouted by a billionaire with nothing but his own interests in mind so that he can make more money off of his apartheid emeralds. How dare you? How selfish is it to assume that there is really no environmental impact and that we're all a bunch of environmental extremists when you don't even live here, when you visit here maybe once, when you've lived here for maybe 2 years? I don't want to hear it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I also want to point out the fact that nobody has really talked about the people when it comes down to this. We've seen a lot about like SpaceX is creating jobs and is doing great things for this community and the community loves it. That is so far from the truth, so far from the truth. And none of you could know that because you're not a part of this community. So how dare you come here and act like you understand even an iota of what's going on here? And this land, not only is it ancestral and sacred, it does not belong to us. It belongs to the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe, first and foremost, who have not been, who have not discussed this at all with the FAA. The FAA refuses to discuss this. SpaceX refuses to discuss this. LNG refuses to discuss this. How much more indigenous erasure will you all be complicit in? You have been sold a lie by a billionaire, a lie. And you're just repeating a billionaire's lies because you think it's going to be cool to go to space? How ridiculous. Are you 5? This is not an episode of freaking Star Trek. This is our lives. This is our home. I can see the explosions from the rockets from my window. And there is a huge environmental impact. The last time that there was an explosion here, they could not clean up our beach. The beach where I played as a child, the beach where my family has gone fishing, the beach where thousands of people have used as a place of recreation, as a place for food, because this is a low-income community that is majority minority, which nobody has mentioned. This is racial injustice. This is environmental racism, and you are trying to get us to leave our homes. We have already seen the impacts of gentrification in our communities. 30 seconds. I myself have seen my rent raised, and I cannot believe the audacity some of you have. And you need to take a good look at your lives and think about it, because this is ridiculous. And you are disgusting neo-colonizers with not even a penny in this race. This has nothing to do with you. Listen to directly impacted voices. The FAA needs to, at the very least, do an environmental impact statement. But at the most, this entire project should be canceled. I am disgusted and I am angry and I cannot believe
That's
this.
3 minutes. Thank you for your comments.